All right, Miles, the Cincinnati Bengals. Oh my goodness, they absolutely, completely, utterly dominated, annihilated, and obliterated the Buffalo Bills in the AFC divisional round 27-10. Nobody saw this coming. I doubt even the most hardcore Bengals fans expected what we just saw there. That was just unbelievable. Complete, total team win from Cincinnati. Offense, defense, special teams, to the quarterback, Joe Burrow, to the lowest ranking coaching staff. Total team win. But Bengals fans, we want to hear from you guys in the comment section below. Despite it being a total team win, there's going to be one guy that you think really stood out and had a monster game. Give us your MVP for this massive Bengals playoff victory in the comment section below. And while you're down there, make sure you hit subscribe so that way all of our Bengals content, and we make a lot of it, gets sent right to you whenever we publish it. But enough of that, Mize. What are your thoughts on this just incredible, dominant Bengals victory?
Yeah, Nick, there's two things that stand out to me about the Bengals. Like we said, huge win against the Bills. Going back to the Promised Land AFC Championship game, title or rematch against the Chiefs, that everything's lining up to be just like last year. Can they continue this run to the Super Bowl? But Nick, two things that stood out for me. One, the Bills were only able to sack Burrow once. So even with this beat up O-line that the Bengals were playing with, they kept Burrow relatively clean. I know there's a couple times they got pressure on him, but one sack with this offensive line was pretty good, seeing as how Burrow took 36 pass attempts. I think this was a good sign for Bengals fans that Burrow was going to be able to keep clean. And on the other side, the Bengals defense shut down this Bills offense, and they got Allen. Allen took some shots tonight. He got checked for concussion once on that outside blitz by the corner. There's just so many times the Bengals were getting pressure on Allen. They really couldn't do anything. And this looked like this Bills offense looked worse than the Ravens offense did last week with their backup quarterback in. So the Bengals defense has just elevated their level of play in this playoff, and they look like a top tier elite unit at this point in time, Nick.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And one of the things you brought up, and I think was brought up during the broadcast as well, is that harking back to last year, because if you go back to last postseason, that run did have a kind of magical feel for the Bengals, right? They beat the Titans, on Tannehill throwing 3 interceptions. They have that goal line interception against the Raiders. They have the comeback against the Chiefs, where the Chiefs made a couple mistakes down in the red zone. They don't get any points. Mahomes throws a pick in overtime. Things like that. It felt like a magical run. This didn't feel magical, Miles. This felt malevolent. This felt massive and vicious and nasty, dominant football. Because if you look at the way the Bengals won this game, obviously Burrow played great, not taking anything away from him, but they won it in the trenches. They won it in the running game. They won it with their offensive line beating up the Bills front seven and their running backs led by Joe Mixon. Monster game, 20 carries for a $105 and a touchdown. They won it up there, but they also won it with their defensive line harassing Josh Allen, to your point, and limiting them up to only 3.4 yards per carry, 64 total yards on the ground. They won this game because they were the more physical team. They won this game because they were the tougher team. I think all around, this is a completely different Bengals vibe than it was last year. Last year, it felt like Burrow pulling it out at the end, McPherson making clutch kicks, just finding a way to win. This year, it feels like they're legitimately a better football team than the Buffalo Bills, a team that many people throughout the course of the season, especially going into season, was an overwhelming Super Bowl favorite, and they went into Buffalo and clearly outclassed them, Mize.
Yeah, and I think another few things stand out on the stat sheet to me, Nick, and that's turnovers and penalties. The Bengals only gave the ball up twice, whereas the Bills gave it up 4 times, and then, one turnover for the Bills, 0 turns for the Bengals. I meant punts. The Bengals only punted twice. The Bills punted 4 times in this game. And then the penalty yardage, 2 penalties for the Bengals for only 9 yards, where the Bills had 8 penalties for over 60 yards. They were big-time penalties. I felt like that it really changed the momentum of the game a bunch of times, and they just couldn't seem to get out of their own way. But it's like you said, the Bengals, over every facet of this game, whether it was, first downs, whether it was punts, whether it was, penalty yardage, whether it was just total yardage, dominated the Bills, and they look ready. This team doesn't look magical, as you said. This just looks like a flat-out good team heading in to play Kansas City, and I think they have a pretty good chance against a Kansas City who's playing with a hobbled Mahomes.
Yeah, and they've beaten the Chiefs the last 3 times, but they're 3-0, and you alluded to it. Chiefs is, Mahomes is beat up. He's got that sprained ankle. He's not going to be able to move very much, so the Chiefs offense is going to have to react a little bit. I mean, it literally feels like the Bengals right now. If you told me today who the best team in the AFC is, I'd go Cincinnati, and I don't think it's close right now. And if I'm a Bengals fan, I am absolutely stoked because the stars are aligning for another Super Bowl run.